camps. It's Northcom running this country, and they're ready to take over. They are ready to suspend posse comitatus in this country. Northcom features prominently in a 2006 meeting that Judicial Watch gets the documents for. You have the top leaders from Northcom there, and they brag about merging the Mexican, Canadian, and military of the U.S. since before 9/11. They said, we've been doing this before 9/11. We're coordinating this, merging the militaries, merging the economies, and bragging about it. Freedom of Information Act, SPP. Who were the U.S. representatives at the SPP meeting? Very good indicator of who's controlling this country. Representatives from Lockheed Martin, Chevron, Wall Street Journal, NATO, the Undersecretary of Defense of this country, the Migration Policy Institute, to tell you what a good thing open borders are. Representatives from Lawrence Livermore, National Security Council, the chairman of the Defense Science Board, very powerful group right there, Peter Pace, head of the Joint Chiefs, James Woolsey of the CIA, and Booz Allen Hamilton. Again, Google it. Booz Allen Hamilton. It's good stuff. And of course, James Schlesinger, who was the former Energy and Defense Secretary. So, some pretty heavy hitters at this meeting. Were you invited? I think mine got lost in the mail, my invitation. You know. Now, who's the chairman of this meeting, right? George Shultz. Tarpley likes to talk about George Shultz. George Shultz, right? You see the influence of this individual who is a member of the CFR, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, and Bohemian Grove. I mean, that's a four-hitter. That's like hitting 10 home runs in one game. And this is an individual who worked with Paul Volcker to dismantle the Bretton Woods system. I mean, you want to talk about a tool of the bankers, you know, a hand puppet. There is your man right there, destroying the gold standard under Nixon. And he is the chief handler of the neocons. This is the individual who handpicks Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rice, and he's the master of the Vulcans. So this is a little bit, you start going up that pyramid when you start looking at a man like George Shultz. Shultz, past, present, and future, well, he worked at Bechtel, which is privatizing third world assets, an extremely evil company. He was the head of that company. He's still on the board. Secretary of State under Reagan, chairman of the International Council of J.P. Morgan Chase. Well, this lets you know who he might be working for. Rockefeller Morgan Network of Finance Oligarchs. He also was the co-chair of California's Economic Recovery Council with who? Warren Buffett. Now, who does Buffett work with? See that guy right there? That beautiful guy is Arnold Schwarzenegger. That decrepit old white man next to him is Jacob Rothschild. I can't believe I called him beautiful. I'd like that guy's ego needs something bigger, you know. This Austrian, like, Superman Nazi who says that all people need to be controlled. I don't mean to heap any compliments on him. But so you can begin to see where Shultz is tied. Rockefeller, Morgan, Rothschild, you see how these circles begin to move. Shultz, who founds him? Well, he works at something called the Hoover Institute. I talked about them a little bit before. Who funds the Hoover Institute? This major neocon warmongering think tank. Archer Daniels Midland, that's GM Foods. The ARCO Foundation, it's the HARP system. I would go through this a little more. Boeing, Exxon, Ford Motors, and General Motors, those are the Nazi financiers, and they do a lot of the fake left foundation funding. So J.P. Morgan and Dean Witter for the Federal Reserve. Let's say 51 or 15. Really? Damn, boy. All right. So anyway, the SPP is the nexus of the coup faction, and obviously these people are trying to push a North American Union. There you see the NAFTA Superhighway, what they are trying to push right now, and they're doing that with the Trans-Texas Corridor. Proposed 6 lanes, the adjacent railway system, they're talking about a pipeline underneath. Foreigners to build the NAFTA program, they're having the Spanish company Sintra build this. They're also buying up local newspapers in Texas and Oklahoma. They've bought up the Indiana highways, they bought up some of the Chicago highways, and they're doing this through eminent domain, saying that they can take your private property. The Supreme Court, ruled 5-4 that they can take your property. This was in a case in Connecticut, New London. Who did this? It was the court liberals. It was the people like Stevens at Kennedy and Souter, Bader Ginsburg, and Breyer. So this is not Scalia who did it to you, although that is a pretty rapacious individual himself. And they're doing it so that they can build a $300 million research center for Pfizer. Here you see eminent domain, 21st century reality. And you see the chemtrails in the sky there too. This is from a guy named David Dees. The open border SPP is a bipartisan issue. Clinton pushes NAFTA, no border guard, services to illegal immigrants, guest worker, total amnesty. Bush pushes CAFTA, blanket amnesty, guest worker, and a phony virtual fence, which is a $2 billion handout to Boeing for spy drones. And what are they doing now? Lobbying for the FTAA, trying to expand this thing to South America. The FTAA is stalled because of Chavez in Venezuela, Morales in Bolivia, and Correa in Ecuador, and Kirchner in Argentina, who are opposing this and trying to stop this from happening. Let me talk a little bit about the border fence. This is a massive $2 billion handout. They're talking about 1,800 towers, massive cameras. Now you say, good, they're building a fence. That's what we need. No. This is a biometric fence. This is designed to keep you and Muslim Americans from escaping in a martial law scenario. They're not trying to stop the flow of illegal immigrants or drugs into this country. Do you think the corporations want to stop that cheap labor? Do you think the CIA, oh yeah, let's stop our own drug trade. Let's crash the stock market by cutting off heroin and opium. No, no, no. They're trying to keep you from leaving the country when they detonate a nuke in this country and then tell you, you better get to that FEMA camp. Now, I carry my passport on me. You never know what could happen. I'm not looking to leave, but we always better be prepared. And they want to stop you from being able to have the freedom to not just move around this country, but move around to other countries. And that's why they're doing this. It's biometric tracking. This is part of the SPP agenda. See, they know you want a border fence. They'll give you a border fence, a biometric $2 billion handout to Boeing. It's a fraud, and it will eliminate freedom in this country to move around. They're trying to turn us into Cuba, ladies and gentlemen. Who needs a false flag attack? Like I said, the SPP planners. The open border is a major boon to the drug dealers who pump this money into the stock market and through the banks. 75% of cocaine is now moving through the border in Mexico. This also, the majority of marijuana I put there, it's the swag, though. That's the stuff with seeds and stems, for those of you who know. Starting in 1989, the Colombian cartels have been using Mexico with the open border. They've been profiting off of it. This is a continuation of the Iran-Contra drug network connected to Bill Clinton and Mena, Arkansas's drug operations. He takes over in 1992. The Bushes and Clintons are drug-dealing business partners. And the people that are helping them run it, Las Zetas. These are the ex-military and special forces commanders trained at the U.S. School of the Americas in Georgia. So it's really nice. These CIA guys are protecting the drug dealers. You see, the network is pretty good. Look into the work of Sully Castillo. He talks a lot about this. The banks, the CIA, and Wall Street. Does the DEA and the CIA are enabling the cartels that work with the government? Like I said, Sully Castillo. Citibank was busted in the 1990s, funneling money for Raul Salinas, who was the brother of the Mexican president. Citibank, again, equals Rockefeller family. It says drug money moving through there. $500 to $600 billion laundered by the banks at enormous rates. The money is then funneled into the stock market. Coincidence? You know, Bush just last month is allowing 100 private Mexican trucking firms to move unlimited access across the border. I'm guaranteeing you some of those are going to have drugs on them. It's not a coincidence. This proposed NAFTA superhighway, they're talking about connecting it from Laredo, Texas to Duluth, Minnesota into Canada. It's really further than that. The 6-lane Trans-Texas corridor. That's Rick Perry selling you out. That is your federal government selling you out. Privately constructed by a foreign firm which is buying up local newspapers to stop dissent. They don't like what I'm saying. Taliban cut opium production by 95%. Why'd they invade Afghanistan? Well, part of it is for the natural gas and the Trans-Caspian pipeline. Big part of why the stock market's going down. No opium anymore. You see, they pump that money in there, and that's what keeps the stock market propped up. So you see, opium production gets cut down. They put in the CIA warlords. Bumper crop year again. What happened? What changed? Well, the controllers changed, right? You see Plan Colombia and the FARC and the AUC. This, you know what this is? This is Richard Grasso, former head of the New York Stock Exchange, hugging one of the FARC rebel leaders in Colombia in 1999. Now, why is he going down with these people that control massive coca fields? You know, they're business partners. They work together. The money gets funneled through the banks, and he's a representative. Now, they weren't able to cut a deal with the FARC. So what happens? Plan Colombia, billions of dollars to eradicate FARC coca fields and put in AUC coca fields. These are the right-wing paramilitaries. And now the AUC is controlling the cocaine market and pumping that into the United States. So this is a great picture. This defines the way our economy works. It's drugs and just filthy ass, I'm sorry, I said a swear, filthy money. Drug networks, private and public. This relates to 9/11. The alleged hijackers trained at Huffman Aviation in Florida, caught transporting heroin by the DEA. Atta makes visits to the Florida Keys, has constant access to cheap cocaine. This relates to the Iran-Contra drug running network, funneled by the banks at major fees, 20 to 30%, and also dates back to Skull and Bones, opium wars. Those are the original Anglo drug dealers. Drugs in prison, this is a 1-2 punch. Because I'm short on time, I can't talk about it, but there's a major prison industrial complex, 1 out of every 130 residents incarcerated. We put more people in jail in this country than China or any other country, creating the prison industrial complex, the privatization, forced prison labor, average 70 cents an hour, over 100,000 inmates in prison labor right now. This is financed by Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch, who put out the $3 billion in prison construction bonds, one of the fastest growing industries in this country. It relates to the privatization of warfare, the rise of the green badgers. What's happening now is this entire system is being privatized. Titan and CACI were used for the torture at Abu Ghraib prison. Computer sciences and SAIC run large parts of the NSA through the Trailblazer and Groundbreaker program. I'm going to talk a little bit about that if I have time. Booz Allen Hamilton and SRI run the NRO programs right now. There are armies for hire, places like DynCorp, Halliburton, Executive Outcomes, Custer Battle, Aegis, and Wackenhut. Armies for hire, mercenary armies that are being used in Iraq right now and being used by other foreign countries. And of course, DynCorp and Halliburton hire lobbyists to not enforce existing human trafficking laws. So they have the sex slavery trade in Yugoslavia and Eastern Europe, which is dominated by these private military industrial contractors. Big profits. You can buy a slave on the markets of Europe for less than $5,000. It's a lot cheaper in some other countries too. Places like Vietnam and Cambodia. The future economy is prisons, prison industrial complex. Halliburton's building $385 million in emergency detention facilities in this country. I believe those were called death camps when the Nazis built them. They were called gulags when Stalin built them. They're called emergency detention facilities in this country. I guess it's just a semantics issue. The new programs is what they're calling it. Quote, new programs. Just Google it. New programs. Bush's new programs. FEMA detention facilities in most states. The U.S. Army has recently updated the civilian internment labor programs. They've reactivated those. This relates to programs back in the 80s, things called Rex 84, Operation Garden Plot, Operation Cable Splicing, where they planned for mass detentions. This was being run by Oliver North and the shadow government. One of those members was Dick Cheney. A dominant prison economy is the future under a martial law scenario. So let's talk about the police state. Militarizing for martial law. You see, this is what they want. Police, M16s, having automatic machine guns in your face. Policeman isn't your friend anymore. Policeman's going to kill you when he wears black boots and a ski mask and a helmet. Bipartisan progression of the police state. We need to understand both parties are working to control us via the police state. They have the Patriot Act on 9/11. We need to begin 9/11 truthers. How is that thing printed up? I mean, this is a big document. Boy, it's like they had it ready, huh? Then, of course, you have the Domestic Security Enhancement Act, a.k.a. Patriot Act 2, which is passed after the staged capture of Saddam. When I say stage capture, they had him for weeks. This is admitted. They had him for weeks and released him and then passed this. Really tough to find articles about it, but they did it. National Intelligence Reorganization Act of 2004. This merges the intel agencies, begins to merge the databases, and creates a terror czar. John Negroponte, the great runner of the death squads in Honduras, who has since been replaced by Cheney Admiral Mike McConnell. You have the Real ID Act of 2005. That's the national ID card. 2006, the Democrats say, oh, we don't like the Patriot Act. We hate it. We just want to stop it. Patriot Act reauthorization and expansion. That's literally what it was. 2006, you have the Military Commissions Act saying that you could be an enemy combatant, you can be tortured, killed, murdered by your government. You have no rights. Furthermore, the legislation exempted Bush and his cronies from war crimes tribunals. Okay, they're exempting themselves because they're afraid they might get caught for this stuff, for the torture. You have the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2006. This federalizes the National Guard for a national emergency. And normally the state's governors would have to say, okay, we give you our National Guard for this emergency. No longer. In this bill, Bush has taken over the National Guard. The New York Times said, preparation for martial law, question mark? That was the title of the article. New York Times is admitting these are preparations for martial law. Of course, recently there was the Pelosi Anti-Terrorism Bill of 2007, expanding on the fraudulent 9/11 Commission's police state recommendations with expanded terror databases. And of course, this means that your Bill of Rights is being eviscerated. Your ability to be a free citizen, your rights that you have as an individual who is born free. Your government doesn't have any inherent rights over you. This is a fraud. This is the mind control. They put the chains inside your mind. The greatest chains are inside your mind. You enslave yourself by believing they have a right to do this. We should all be fighting against this. Any sane person should fight against this. The Bill of Rights is being eviscerated. They are developing mass databases like the Matrix system. Like they call it the Matrix system. This isn't a joke. They're laughing at you. They think this is funny. They think you're an idiot. They think you're stupid. They think they can take advantage of you. You're a mark. You're a loser. You're that person at the three-card Monte game thinking that the ace of spades is on the left. They're moving the ball. They think you're so stupid. And look at this. They have the Tangram system, which is the outgrowth of total information awareness, the DARPA system. They said, okay, well, we're going to shut down total information awareness. Bad press. It grew into Tangram. These are terabyte and petabyte database systems. That means they can hold tens of thousands of pages on every citizen, what you bought, what kind of toilet paper you use, what websites you go on, where you drive. They want to track and trace everything. They're getting the systems ready for that and doing a decent job at it, I might add. I say that you can disappear into the black side. This is federalizing the local and state National Guards under Joint Task Force Command. This isn't the preparation for a martial law scenario. People say, well, they're undermining the Geneva Convention. Kind of. It's just a more brazen version of what's going on. I mean, School of the Americas has been training torturers all over the world. We've been working with Nazis since World War II. I mean, this is not something new. Look at the Gladio. I mean, they're used to killing people. They're used to torturing people. This is a more brazen version of it. They've set up the Gulag Archipelago in places like Poland, Romania, Ethiopia, Syria, Egypt, Israel, Thailand, South Carolina, Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. These are the ones we know about. These are the people who get put onto CIA rendition planes, tortured, and murdered. And this is what your government's doing. They're setting up this Gulag Archipelago. You're going to be part of it soon, if they have their way. I mean, if we don't stop them, remember those emergency detention facilities I talked about? You're next. Sound good? We better fight fast.